With me in the studio is Sarah Thorpe. She is going to talk about her modern retelling of the story of Joan of Arc. It's called Heretic, and she has added some extras to it. Welcome to Stage Left again.
Thanks so much for having me.
You're welcome. What more did you add?
With this remount, I just wanted to get a little bit, dig a little deeper into who Joan was as a person and as a young woman in these extraordinary circumstances. So some scenes are rewritten from the original script. Some scenes were cut. So it's essentially the same story for anyone who saw the April production, but it digs a little deeper. And I think it was important to dig deeper this time around.
All right. What made you want to do that? I mean, I saw the last production. It seemed pretty fleshed out.
Thank you.
But I guess something must have inspired. Did you feel like when you look back at at your performances or whatever, I don't know if it was taped or everything, you look back at it with you, did you think, well, there's more I could put here?
Yeah, that's exactly it. Looking back on it, I thought I could, do a little more with this scene, or I have an idea for how to do this scene a different way, or I would get an idea for a scene that, we didn't have time to add in to the original production. So just going off of some other ideas that I wanted to explore.
And was it all of your ideas, or there's a couple of your people who you trust were in the audience and said,
So certainly got some feedback from people that came to see the April production, other people I know in the industry that I trust and I respect, and asked them, so what did you think? And what any constructive criticism, or what he thought worked, what he thought didn't. So definitely got some feedback from people, and also from the core Soup Can Theater group to see. And, remounting it was something I had wanted to do anyway, because our first run was quite short, so I thought it would be great to have another opportunity to do this again, and the opportunity presented itself. So there we go.
All right, and you moved it now. That's going to be the Theatre Pass Mariah backspace.
Yep.
Which I guess it's a little bigger stage than you had the last time. Bit
of a bigger stage. I think seats about 55 people in the backspace.
Right.
And Theatre Pass Mariah is such a wonderful space for new Canadian work, and so it's really great to be in that sort of environment of new work and that sort of thing.
All right. So for folks who didn't come to see Heretic, the early version, you want to tell them a little bit about the story and what kind of made you want to do a modern retelling of the story of Joan of Arc?
Of course. So in Heretic, we meet Joan in this sort of afterlife space. She's looking back on her life and the decisions she made and her actions, and wondering, was that really worth it? Did I make the right decisions? Could I have done something else? Should I not have done this or said that? And through this process of asking herself these questions, she reflects back on her life and everything that she did and the people she met along the way. So we don't just deal with Joan. We have an interaction with her parents, with the King of France, with soldiers, with townspeople, with people who are in league with the English, who were fighting against France and didn't want Joan to succeed.
Right.
Yeah. So it's a lot.
Right, and she plays all of these characters.
Yes. Yes, I do.
How many do you remember how many characters you actually bring to the stage?
In this one.
Oh, in this one, it's a little more?
A little more. So I want to say maybe close to 10.
Okay.
Yeah, and some characters, we changed it a little bit from last year. All the characters, I played them all live. Some characters are live this time, and some characters we do as voiceovers.
Oh, okay. So you have a little help, I guess the multimedia one.
A little help, yeah. I looked through the script and decided what would work better as a voiceover character, what would work better as a character we need to actually meet and see in the flesh.
And do you do the voiceovers yourself?
I do, yes.
That's all right. Keeping it Joan of Arc here, very Joan of Arc sort of thing. Of course, Joan of Arc, the story, a lot of people know it. She has been considered a witch, and among other things. And again, let me just ask again, how do you see Joan?
I think she was someone who was clearly so devout in her beliefs and in her spirituality. And she was raised in this time of war and lots of violence and social unrest. The 100 Years' War had already gone on for decades.
Yes.
Well, it even lasted longer than 100 years. It had already been, on for decades by the time she was born. So she was already born into that kind of environment and saw how the English were treating the French and were occupying them. And, I think something just, whether she's so devout in her belief she had this spiritual awakening or other outside factors, I think she just decided, no, we can't put up with this anymore. This isn't right. This is our country. I have to do something about it.
But I think one of the major things I guess that was her motivation, right? But she was hindered because of the fact that she was a woman.
Right.
And I guess that's what made her a witch, right?
Yeah.
Because women weren't supposed to lead men into war at that time.
No way. And she certainly, I think, was very ahead of her time because she was doing things and saying things that women would really not do in the 1400s. And certainly, cutting her hair short and dressing like a man and wearing armor and going into battle. From the church's perspective at that time, that was seen as a sinful act. That was a heretical act. Like the Bible says, women should not dress as men. And, you're clearly a sinner. You're a witch. How dare you? But even though it just made, how else could she have done what she did if she didn't wear pants and cut her hair short? She's like in battle. Wouldn't have made sense to have a dress on and keep her hair long.
No. Well, I guess those were the different times, and of course, you've done modern retelling. How do you think she would fit into, as our new Prime Minister says, 2015?
Well, I think, talking about Joan of Arc now, certainly with the long-standing issues, but issues that have come that are much more talked about now about women's issues and women's rights and equality, certainly at the forefront of a lot of people's minds, I think. So here's a woman who was very ahead of her time and was really saw herself an equal among a world of men, where men reigned supreme. And I see that it didn't really seem to bother her. She just said, well, I say we do this because this is the right thing to do. And it doesn't matter if I'm a woman telling a man what to do because this is just the right thing. Why are you bothered? So I think she was someone, who just really didn't let her gender stop her from doing what she felt was the right thing to do, no matter what odds were against her. And certainly she paid for it with her life. But she never stopped fighting.
Right. And I guess you've done, even after you finished that last one, you went back and did a lot more research into her. What new did you find out when you did this second look back?
Well, some more details about her trial, and just what a terrible circumstance that was. Like, certainly you picture a medieval trial. Already the medieval period makes people go, oh God, it was so dark and depressing. Well, here's an awful trial that lasted for actually 3 months that she was kept a prisoner and questioned and interrogated. It was also the time of the Inquisition, so they were just, looking for all the heretics who has sinned against God. We're going to root them out and make an example of them. And so just what she went through during the course of that trial and how awful that was. Sometimes she would be in a courtroom with all of these priests and men of the clock just throwing questions at her. Other times they would go into her cell when she was, shackled up, and, they would just crowd her and like throw questions at her there. So you have to, for me, it kind of thinks, my God, what would be going through her mind? How much would that have weighed on her emotionally and mentally, just to having to go through this for 3 months and to constantly tell them, I'm not wrong. What I heard was truly divine voices telling me to do these things. Was just trying to help the French people. And, and the English were just so scared of her. And, they thought, if the French people continue to listen to her and believe in her, they're going to rise up against us, and we can't have that. And, this teenager really scared them, and they did everything they could to get her out of the way, and, they succeeded, sadly.
15th century terrorist, I guess you could put it that way.
Sort of. Well, she's certainly, that's another angle you could look at it, to think she was a religious zealot, because she was certainly so pious and so...
She did believe she was on a mission from God.
Oh, yeah. Yes. Absolutely. No matter what anyone... You can look at the other environmental factors of the time and how, well, maybe it was something else that made you think, you heard these things. No matter what actually happened, she was so... That was what she believed 100%, and no one and nothing could make her think otherwise.
All right. And she was very successful as a commander.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. Absolutely. There was a siege over Orléans that had lasted for 7 months, that the English had the siege over this town in France. And she came in with her men, and it was lifted in 4 days.
Right.
What an army couldn't do in 7 months, she did in 4 days.
So she definitely had a divine look.
Absolutely. And whether people believed in her or not, they certainly said, well, here's someone who's getting the job done, and someone who clearly there's something about her. So yeah, let's listen to her. Let's do what she says, because.
Mm-hmm. But again, it was because of all that success that made her an enemy of the state, of both states.
Yeah,
right?
of the English. Yeah.
Right. And she didn't get a lot of support from the French, I don't think.
It depended, because France was divided into two factions. There was those who supported the English and thought, yeah, you know what, they do have the rightful claim to the throne here, and they should be here doing what they're doing. We're on their side. And another
collaborators.
Exactly. And the rest of France was on the side of their Dauphin, who they thought should be the rightful heir to the throne, and the English shouldn't be here. What's happening? So it was such a mixed time, and half of the country's against her, half of them are believe in her, and so it was kind of enemies on both sides.
Alrighty, and of course, she, as history put down, she went on. She was burned at the stake. And lives on in the history of this thing. And again, what really inspired you to take on to this? You want to do this for yourself. What? Let me put it this way: what lessons do you think can be learned from her stories right now?
I know for me, in the grand scheme of life, even though I'm certainly not in any situation or circumstance in my life where it's like life or death.
Right.
Excuse me. She's certainly someone who I look up to, because she just never gave up, even though her circumstances at times seemed absolutely hopeless and impossible. And she always found a way to keep going, no matter what it took. So I think that's just a great example for anyone to look at and say, yeah, she didn't give up, no matter what was thrown her way. So even though we don't have, or at least I don't have, life or death situations that dictate what I do in my daily life, certainly something to look up to, because certainly working in indie theater, sometimes it does feel like life and death, because you're trying to get work done, and it is very difficult, but you can't give up on that. You got to keep working hard. And what inspired me, just her perseverance and being really interested on finding out and figuring out who was this girl beneath this very saintly image, or this image of a great warrior. Like, she was a teenage girl who couldn't read and couldn't write, and was, just lived on a farm with her parents in the country, and just put into these incredible circumstances. How did she deal with it? And, very little is known about her life before her military career. And certainly there's no historical record of, when after a day of being interrogated or after a day on the battlefield, what was she thinking? What was she feeling? Was she thinking secretly, oh, maybe this isn't the right thing to do? Or was she thinking, oh, yes, we're doing great. We got to keep going, got to keep fighting. And So really trying to find who's the human beneath the
Right,
sage, beneath the soldier.
It's interesting because you just said there's no record of her being military trained or anything like that, is there?
I think,
Is there?
well, based on the research I did, just really quick, here's how you handle a sword.
Okay.
Off you go. But also one article I read, their theory was that she must have been a genius and just figured it out.
Okay.
And
She got a sword in her hand.
And just figured out, okay, and this is how I handle the sword when I'm on a horse, when there's someone coming at me with a sword. This is what I do. And she had a great intelligence and just figured it out.
I guess the situation called for that, and it did. She just
Adrenaline.
Adrenaline. She rose to the occasion.
Exactly.
Plus, I guess when you have that belief that you've been put here to do something, then nothing steps in your way, I guess.
No, and she really seemed like the type of person that she wasn't going to let anything get in her way, because she had a mission and she had to get it done and done the right way. And for sure she wasn't going to let anything get in her way, like learn how to ride a horse, okay, fight with a sword, okay, and these are the things that are going to help me, so I better learn how to do them. And some accounts do say she held great discourse with priests and very educated men about theology and religion, and could stump them in conversation. So a lot of people say she was incredibly smart and to know about these things and talk so well about them, even for someone who had no education whatsoever. So it doesn't mean she wasn't smart, and I think she was incredibly smart. I agree with the idea that she must have been a genius to figure all this stuff out. And
and be able to take on seasoned veterans in war and win.
Exactly, and earn the respect.
Did she ever lose a battle? She never lost one.
After the siege of Orléans, which was her sort of great victory, and that was sort of, winning that kind of made people who hadn't believed her before believe her. That was like, if she wins this, then we know she's legit. She's the real deal. So she was, obviously that was a great success, and that led to the Dauphin of France being officially crowned the King of France. So that was a huge gain for France at the time during this war. There was a truce called afterwards between those who supported France and those who supported the English. They're like, let's call a truce for 6 months. There's been a lot of fighting. And she was sort of stuck. And she's like, well, what do I do when there was a truce? I have to fight against the English. What can I do now? Because at that time, those who she thought had supported her were sort of moving away from her and saying, you don't have to talk about these voices all the time, just kind of keep quiet. And because there was fear that because the English were afraid of her and thought, oh, well, she beat us in this battle, she must be a witch. Clearly, that's the only answer. And so those who had supported her and supported the king were like, well, if people keep saying that and thinking that, they could say that the king's crown was won by the devil and not by God, and that makes us look bad. So there was a lot of, don't stand so close to us, Joan. You can stop talking now. And after this truce was lifted, some people obviously still followed her and believed in her, and she did try to beat back the English in a couple of other battles that were unsuccessful. And in one battle was where she was ultimately captured. Yeah, she was thrown off her horse and captured by the English.
Put on trial.
And there we go. The rest is, as they say, history.
All right. In terms of history, where does, like, in feminist literature, what position does she hold?
That's an excellent question. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
And for me, I find her to be a great role model, even though I don't necessarily believe that she did hear voices. That's just my own belief. I think there are a lot of other environmental factors of the time and place she was in that would have led to her thinking she did, but that doesn't discredit anything she did. Like, what she did was still extraordinary. But where she actually sits in feminist literature, that is an excellent question.
Yeah.
I wish I had an answer for you.
All right, because, you know, it's like, okay, there is, you hear all these names thrown out. But I can't remember ever really hearing a studied feminist point of view on Joan of Arc, right? So, be interested. Maybe it's out there. I just got to check it out.
It's got to be out there.
Yeah, it's just out there and you look around. So, are you ready for Wednesday?
Ready for Wednesday.
This
ready
time
to
it's
go.
a longer run. There changes to the set?
It's we have a new design team, so if for anyone who saw the April production, it's gonna look really different.
And it's longer, right?
It's a little bit. Excuse me. It's a little bit longer than the original production.
Right. So no intermission.
No intermission. It runs just about an hour.
Okay.
No intermission. And we run 7:30 Wednesdays through Saturdays and 2:00 Saturdays and Sundays from November 11th to 22nd.
Alrighty, go check it out. You do have Tuesday shows also, right?
We don't have Tuesday shows.
Okay, no Tuesday shows. I think I missed that when you were saying.
No
right?
problem.
All right. So, you could always check out Soup Can Theatre's website.
All the info's there.
All the info is there. Or you could also go to Theatre Pass Marai and pick up how to get tickets and all that good stuff. Go and check them out. Much success on your run this time.
Thank you so much.
And let's fill the theaters with for indie theater. You gotta go. It's an exciting time to do indie theater.
It's an exciting time, and there's so many great indie shows running that have been running this fall and coming up this month. There is so much to see. So if you want to support the indie theater, now is the time to do it.
Alrighty. Well, Sarah, it was a pleasure having you again on the show.
Thanks so much for having me.
And as I said, keep continuing to do what you do.
Thank you.
All right. We'll be back with listings right after this break.